Good. So thanks everyone for tuning in. This is Kristen Eulenbrock from the US CLIVAR Project Office, and we hope that you find this webinar really useful. We have not done one of these in the past, so once we're done, we would love any feedback that you have to give us. And so yeah, so just so you know, I just mentioned, but for anyone new who's joined, I have all of us off. So if you have a mute button on your phone or on your microphone, please go ahead and maybe try to use that while we are presenting. Mike and I are going to record this webinar because there are a few folks who can't listen to it, and we think they would find it valuable regardless. So go ahead and do that, and then once we're done, we're going to probably take about 30 minutes or so to go through this. We'll have plenty of time for you all to ask questions. So thanks for tuning in, and I know Mike's going to kick us off first. So go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. And I want to say that with 30 minutes allotted, I'll try to finish my slides within 20 to 25 minutes, and Kristen has about 5 to 10 minutes for her slides to cover communications and outreach, in addition to the 3 topics I've listed here on the intro slide. And I want to say that while we haven't done this via webinar before, we used to do this when we had annual summit meetings. For several years in a row, I gave up and gave an introductory primer the first evening, hitting upon some of the key points here. Many of the slides some of you may have seen before in presentations by US CLIVAR. We have a standard slide deck that we use to describe the program. So we pulled those from there, and I've provided some updates to refresh that a bit. Okay, so I'll go ahead and walk through in the next 20 minutes, providing you some background on the science plan and how and what went into the science plan that we're trying to implement now, the organizational structure, and in particular the responsibilities of the panels, since many of you are participating on this call as new panelists. And then finally I'll wrap up with some highlights of 2016 action items and directions that our program elements are moving during the past and present year. And that's intended in part to give you a sense of what the other panels, since you serve on one panel, what the other panels are engaged in. And Kristen will follow up with a discussion of communications and outreach activities and how you as a panelist can become more involved. And she'll be able to speak to some of the activities and action items that our various panels have put forward and the types of things that you can engage in as a panelist. And before I start, I also want to say that as a panelist, this is your opportunity over the course of the next 4 years, during your stint on the panel, to bring your expertise. You were selected to represent a sector of the community given your expertise, and so we look to you we rely on you in part to bring that not only your own capability, but the capability of the sector of the community which you represent. And so liaising with that community is important. You also have the opportunity through your participation to take charge and put forward new ideas to make progress on your panel. So be proactive is kind of the message I'd like to get across. So, okay, let me progress here. Many of you know that we initiated a science plan that was released in 2013 following the first 15 years of the program. We were originally commissioned as a 15-year program, and so in late 2011, early 2012, our Scientific Steering Committee engaged with our Interagency Group of sponsoring organizations to talk about the scope of a follow-on program and its duration. And so our agency managers came back recognizing that good progress had been made during 15 years on understanding the role of the ocean and climate. Much remained to be done. And so they did signal an interest in of continuation of US CLIVAR for another 15-year period with its principal focus on the role of the ocean and climate. And so during the course of a 2-year period, starting in 2012 through late 2013, our SSC working with its panels at the time and engaging an external community review of the draft document, published this new science plan. And I do recommend, it's almost required reading for any of our panelists or SSC members. And there's particular sections that correspond to your panel in particular that you'll want to do a deeper dive in. In this science plan, we articulated a first ever US CLIVAR mission statement, emphasizing that the program fosters understanding and prediction of climate variability and change across timescales, emphasizing the role of the ocean, but importantly its interaction with other elements of the Earth system. I'll come back to that point a little later. And then importantly, as a program, US CLIVAR facilitates the coordination of research on outstanding climate questions and helps accelerate progress within the community through its variety of activities beyond what individual PI projects can accomplish. In the time that I have allotted here, I'm not going to be, I have additional slides if we want to get into international CLIVAR and the US Global Change Research Program more in depth and how we relate to those. But I did want to point out that US CLIVAR serves as a US contribution to international CLIVAR, and we do help support international CLIVAR activities. As well, we represent the ocean's role in climate component of the US Global Change Research Program in our entirety. Our whole program is subsumed as a component of the US GCRP. So you've probably seen our goal statements. I hope you have. Again, number 1 emphasizes the role of the ocean. Number 2, focus on understanding processes. 3, better quantifying uncertainties in observations and model simulations and predictions. Number 4, improving the development and evaluation of climate simulations and predictions. And finally, number 5, and we like to stop on this one in particular because this is more programmatic, perhaps, rather than science-focused. But we wanted to stress the importance of collaborating with other research communities and those communities who develop and use climate information, more on the operational side as well. And recognizing that many of the other 4 goals actually do depend on, in large part, our ability to extend a hand to other communities and develop collaborations in a very outward reach. So we included this as an important goal of the program. The science plan also identifies 4 research challenges that help extend the program beyond its former research foci listed here at the bottom. During the first 15 years, much of the work was focused on the intraseasonal to interannual timescale, as well as understanding climate change. And so recognizing that there are other opportunities for which there's readiness within the scientific community and interest of our funding agencies, that with a concerted effort and development of new activities and research opportunities across the agencies, focused in these 4 areas, we should be able to make progress over the course of the next decade. And in particular, it's important to note that for each of these 4 research challenges, they do require us to interact with other communities, engage them effectively. So I'm not going to go into details here. We can follow up, and again, a whole chapter is devoted to each of these 4 research challenges. Suffice to say that many of the implementation activities that I'll show on the next slide help address and are targeted toward helping us make progress on these 4 topics. So now I'm going to move into our structure, and I'm going to dissect this diagram, so we'll go through it piece by piece. But in the blue across the top are our management bodies. In green then are our implementation panels, and in purple are depicted our are implementation activities, is the way we describe them in the plan. These are the actual funded projects or team efforts or meetings and workshops that bring the community together to focus on a particular topic and make progress collectively. So starting with the top tier in blue, we have this three-part management structure. Starting with the Interagency Group, it's comprised of program managers from 11 projects across these 5 agencies listed. And this group of agency managers meets at least every other month, either in person or via telecon. They work to update each other on the activities that they're supporting through their programs and identify opportunities to coordinate implementation of research activities and needs that are identified through our US CLIVAR SSC and its panels. The Scientific Steering Committee is charged with the overall scientific and programmatic guidance for the program. So it's responsible for writing and updating the science plan, developing and charging implementation panels and the strategy to prioritize and sequence activities and make progress, to evaluate progress of the program as it's implemented, both within the panels, but also to provide feedback and comment to agencies in their implementation. Importantly, the Scientific Steering Committee identifies or promotes the identification of scientific gaps and balance across all of our panels, and where gaps are found, promotes the need to address those with new activities. The SSC is the point of contact for coordinating with international CLIVAR and other programs within the U.S., as well as providing an interface with the National Academy of Sciences in its efforts. It ultimately provides the oversight for our working groups and science teams and oversees the operations of the US CLIVAR Project Office. The Scientific Steering Committee is comprised of 9 members, 3 of whom are executive members selected by the Interagency Group. They now serve a 3-year term, and in their final year, they serve as chair of the SSC. That's new this year, and Sonia Legg is now our chair for 2017 till the end of the year, replacing Bob Weller. Dan Weimont then will be chair next year, and Tony Lee the following year. Also included in the SSC membership are the co-chairs of each of our 3 panels. That's by design so that we can have direct engagement of the panel activities within the SSC instead of the SSC just being an oversight committee that gets reported to in comments. There is that capability for our SSC, but importantly, it engages the panel leadership directly and allows, with their membership, we embed cross-panel dialogue right in our SSC meetings. The project office is headquartered here in Washington, D.C. Kristen and I sit here, and then Jill Reisdorf is our project coordinator located in Boulder. Many of you, if you haven't met Jill yet, you will. She will be at the summit, and she will help you with all your travel and logistics needs for meetings that you attend with US CLIVAR. The project office is responsible for the day-to-day management activities, including the coordination of the science planning, the writing of documents and publication of those documents, supporting all meetings of our subsidiary bodies, organizing workshops and conferences, establishing new working groups, science teams, and organizing committees for workshops and conferences, supporting the travel and staff support as well for international CLIVAR, and promoting communication and outreach, as well as liaisoning with our counterparts for other programs. Funding for the project office, we are well funded to support all the activities that I'll show next. And that funding is provided by 4 of our 5 agencies that participate in the Interagency Group listed here. and we get an annual award on the order of $1 million plus some additional funding for specific workshops that the agencies want to support. Now that number, and we'll probably want to get into a discussion later about the implications of budget changes and priorities within the incoming administration and as new leadership gets chosen for our sponsoring agencies. Our tact at present is to move forward through this year as planned, demonstrating the value of our program and the activities that we support. Our summit this year will provide us a good opportunity to showcase that work and engage our agency managers directly, reminding them of the importance of interagency and community input. So the Scientific Steering Committee establishes 3 implementation panels. These have been in operation since 2005, and all 3 of the panels have a common set of responsibilities to advise on priorities, identify research gaps, and develop milestones and action items to make progress. They also develop and encourage submission of workshop requests, new working group prospectuses, and as well as putting forward ideas for new commission studies like climate process teams or model evaluation projects or process studies and field campaigns to further develop and implement the research strategy for their particular panel. The panels also coordinate with other national and international programs as needed, and they liaise with among the other panels and with the working groups and science teams that are relevant to their efforts. Now, each of the panels has a particular charge as connoted by their name, and so the PAUSE panel focuses on identifying observable phenomena that are important to the climate system, i.e. modes of variability, contribute to a sustained observing system design, so providing information on the importance of measurements that are made by the observing system and advocating for sustaining time series over the long term, and developing and evaluating actually the assimilation and synthesis systems and their products. The process study model improvement focuses on advancing our understanding of critical processes, engaging process studies and field campaigns, and providing feedback on best practices, characterizing model uncertainty, and as well as evaluating model biases that need to be addressed, and improving the fidelity of climate models and their subcomponents. This accomplished principally through our climate process team concept, and I can give you more information if you're not familiar with that project approach in the Q&A later. And then our predictability, predictions, and applications interface panel, as implied by the name, focuses on predictability and its limits, demonstrating improved predictions and their uncertainties, and interfacing with applications, assessments, and service communities to help inform our research agenda by identifying user requirements and decision support tools. So I come back to the full suite of activities. Those now in purple are largely advocated or planned, put forward by our panels. We also have open calls to the community so that new working groups, for example, or workshops or conferences, there are opportunities, at least on an annual basis, for anyone in the community who has a good idea to bring forward ideas for support by our funding agencies. Here on the left, science teams, these are 5 to 10 years in duration. We only have one. And I guess you could consider our Amock Science team to be a pilot in that sense. And the intent here is to bring together all funded PIs across participating agencies. In the case of Amock, that's 60 projects and over 100 10 investigators who form the science team and meet on an now 18-month basis in person to share their results, so an update of the state of the science, to identify gaps and near-term research priorities that can collectively be tackled. They put out on the same time schedule, 18 months, a plan that updates on the individual project progress, the more synthesized near-term priorities that they've identified, and progress and recommendations that they make in terms of action items to address those priorities. Below that, you see funded projects. These are largely supported through interagency calls or individual agency or interagency calls. TPOS 2020 is an example of an observing system that is involving multiple agencies. Process studies, often like the dynamics of the MJO, included four of our five IAG agencies. Climate process teams, we've had 2 rounds of interagency calls coordinated between NSF and NOAA. The last round ending in, those projects ended in 2015. And then climate model evaluation projects, we've had a couple of rounds of these that provide incremental funding for projects to evaluate CMIP 3 and CMIP 5 runs. Then on the right-hand side, we have working groups. We have supported 15 of these since 2005. Those below the line have been completed, and their end date is included in parentheses. And so we currently have 2 active working groups, which I'll mention in just a second. And then at the bottom here, of course, we support a number of workshops, conferences, and trainings every year. And so, at our upcoming summit this August, and I hope everyone's marked their calendar to attend, we will have, these are held biannually now, and it will include in person the participation of all of the bodies circled above. And then below, we have reports made out, I said at the summit, but actually the working groups and science team will report via webinar before the summit. And then, of course, the panels have the ability to invite further discussion or participation from the science team, working groups, workshops, and funded projects during their breakouts at the summit. So very quickly, I'm going to run through some of our action items that came out of our individual panel meetings in the last year. You've probably seen these for your particular panel, but I think it's helpful to see what the other panels are working on as well. We do have the PAWS panel report out already. The PISMIT panel is in final editing by me, and the PPAI panel I'll have edited here very soon. So those will be published here within the next few weeks. So for the PAWS panel, engagement of the observing system, as I mentioned, providing direct input for TPOS 2020 and its configuration, its strawman configuration, providing input, a survey done on deep ocean observing system strategy that's being coordinated by International Goose. The PAWS panel is intending and has mapped out, developed terms of reference to jointly review the US GOSHIP program starting in 2018, jointly with the Ocean Carbon Biogeochemistry program. And then we also had a discussion of ocean satellite missions, acknowledging the decadal review being conducted concurrently by the Academy, but highlighting the importance of continuity for scatterometry and salinity missions. For PISMIT, there was a concerted effort started back in 2014 to survey the modeling centers and observational and process study programs to inform a workshop depicted here on the right that was held in October of 2015 that identified opportunities for applying our advanced understanding and processes to improve climate model development, and made the case for future climate process teams. And our agencies are taking those recommendations up this year. We'll see how things play out given potential budget constraints downstream. The PISIT panel also, over the last 2 years, each year has signed up to provide feedback to up to 8 process studies through a webinar series. It's been very successful in terms of its attendance and ability to provide feedback. And a number of topical seminars and workshops were identified by the PISIT panel when it met last year. Then the PPAI panel focused principally on the subseasonal to seasonal timescale, recognizing the recent mandate for NOAA to produce S2S products operationally. And so some of their action items include producing a BAMS overview article, organizing a workshop on S2S regional modeling, developing training sessions on S2S forecasting, information products, and promoting case studies in the use of S2S products. And so quickly, our Amock Science team has implemented over the last decade the Amock Observing Network in collaboration with international partners, including Trans-Basin transects across the subpolar gyre, the North Atlantic, and the South Atlantic. And so they're undertaking studies now of the coherence of signals across the basin, utilizing those networks, identifying new metrics for OBS model comparisons, understanding discrepancies in synthesis products depicted to the right, where even the trend over time can be different depending on the reanalysis products you use, organizing collaborative modeling experiments, and engaging the paleoceanographic community to help extend the data, paleo-based proxy data, of decadal variability of AMOC back over the last millennium and linking up to the more recent instrumental records so that we can understand decadal variability of the system. We have 2 working groups, as I mentioned earlier, one on Arctic change and possible influence on mid-latitude climate and weather. It initiated in 2015 and just this early February held a workshop here in Washington, D.C., where we had 85 international scientists participate, with 30% of them from outside the U.S., so there's good turnout. They focused on, well, they concluded that our understanding, while models are capable of projecting Arctic amplification with some realism, the mechanisms within those models are poorly understood, and so more work needs to be done to understand why the Arctic is amplifying and capturing the processes correctly within the models. As well, understanding, they came up with a set of proposed pathways through consensus discussion of the links between Arctic amplification and climate and weather at mid-latitudes, and identified metrics for observational and model analysis and analysis approaches that can be employed effectively. And importantly, they initiated this the development of coordinated modeling experiments, or a MIP, that will focus on this problem, both Arctic amplification and linkages to mid-latitude weather and climate. That experimental design will be, the first couple of experiments will be designed, I think, by June, and they'll have a published white paper out around the same time. And by the end of the summer, we hope to have the full suite of MIP experiments detailed. We then move on to the changing width of the tropical belt. Some on the call, I think, are participating in this working group. It was initiated last year, and it will be meeting again this fall, the working group, to draft 3 journal articles, one on metrics, a consistent set of metrics to quantify the expansion of the tropics in a consistent framework. There are many approaches within the community that are being used, and nailing down a consistent set for analysis will be important. Identifying how anthropogenic forcing and natural variability contribute to the widening of the tropical belt. And then a third paper looking at how looking at the impacts of tropical belt expansion on climate and weather, particularly at mid and higher latitudes, affecting such things as desertification and drought, changes in monsoon systems, and tropical cyclone formation regions, as well as extratropical storm tracks. There will be a call for new working groups issued later this fall for new efforts to start in 2018. So this will at most start one new working group, so this is highly competitive. And typically during our panel breakout discussions at the summit, ideas for new working groups are brought up, so keep that in mind. And then I'll end with the list of US CLIVAR sponsored workshops and conferences over the past year and this coming through the balance of this year. I would point out that in particular the summit here will have, in August, we'll have 2 science sessions, one focused on polar sea ice and the other on teleconnections. And we hope that these plenary sessions, they last for an hour or two, help seed discussion within the panel breakouts on specific ideas or activities that could be undertaken within the community to address the challenges that are presented in the plenary session. So I'll stop there and hand off to Kristen.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Kristen again here. I'm just going to take a few minutes so we can get to Q&A to talk a little bit about our communications and ways for engagement. And what I'm going to go over is going to be how ways that you all can communicate as panel members, both within your panel as well as with us, and then kind of bring that up a little bit more broadly to ways that we as a project office kind of communicate out to the community and ideas and ways that you can help us do that in sharing that information. So here are a few tools that you can use as panel members and that we encourage you to use. And you are probably familiar with them already since you've come on for the new panel members and those who've been on for some time. We use Google as our main source of email here, and with that we set up groups for all of the panels. And with that, we also set up folders for you to share information. It's been a slow, steady slog to get everyone, into the Google interface and system, so to speak. I know there's always a few problems with folks who don't have Google accounts, but if those are ever an issue, just work with me and we can always work around that. I do want to emphasize that these email lists that you're on for each of your panels, that you should feel free to use those freely. You can send emails yourself to your panel, so you don't need to necessarily go through me. And I would like to encourage that our panel members get in the habit of communicating a little bit more with the email list, sharing information of something you're working on. Maybe you were just at a really great workshop and you want to share, with the panel, hey, we're working on this topic on deep oceans, and I just was here and here's what came out. So getting in the habit of using your email for panel interest a little bit more freely and widely. We also host telecons, which you are familiar with because we've already hosted one this year. This is where we try to just spend an hour. We know we're very aware of everyone's time is precious. But this is to really kind of dive down and move forward on action items to get updates. And then we also host webinars. Some panels use this more than others, and it's a useful tool that you should consider using. For example, our PISMIT panel, our Process Study Model Improvement panel, uses webinars very well to help them review process studies and field campaigns that are ongoing. And so as other panels think about that as a tool that they can use, just work with me and we can always get things scheduled. And you can use webinars for your own business activities too within the panel. A little bit about kind of the general schedule. So that was kind of on a day-to-day, weekly to monthly sort of business, how you guys can communicate. But additionally, our summits are a really great way to get together. And it really kind of helps galvanize you as a panel to go off and do things in the out years and in the off months. These are now every other year, as Mike had mentioned. We do rotate regions with these as well, so we'll be kind of on the East Coast for this one. We'll move to the middle of the country and 2 years from now, and West Coast and whatnot. And the in-between years, we are going to be hosting panel-only meetings, which is what we did last year, and we'll do in 2018 as well. Our SSC does meet annually and tries to help keep things moving and momentum and gives feedback to the co-chairs, which they then distribute to your panels. And then, of course, we can do webinars and telecons scheduled as needed. And then moving up a little bit more broadly, so here's a few outreach and kind of engagement activities that we do as a project office that have input that comes from panels. And also I want you to see these as ways of you to engage as well. So we have a monthly newsgram that you all receive, goes to over 1,000 people. And this is where we kind of really share highlights. We just redesigned it this past month. Hopefully makes it a little bit more easy to click and get through all the information that's in there. We do our news, and with that we really feature kind of information news for US CLIVAR specifically, as well as broader community news. We have a long list of meetings that we include there that have upcoming deadlines, funding opportunities, and jobs. So if there's anything you ever want to include in the newsgram for your own, for your own university or project that you're working on, or something that is panel related, make sure you send that my way, and I'll be sure to include it. We also do a quarterly publication called Variations, and I think hopefully most of you have read some of the issues. The most recent one, our winter one, was guest edited by Manu and Art Miller. So they came out from our pause panel and from a workshop that was held at Scripps last August. I always look for ideas for variations. So if you have ideas, send them my way. We schedule these pretty far out in advance, so if it's something timely, let me know. We'll get them on our calendar. Our spring edition is going to be on deep ocean observations, and Renelis Perez is going to be our guest editor for that. Our website is probably the go-to resource for you and anyone outside of CLIVAR to get information, and I really encourage you to kind of peruse that if you have questions. Go to that quite frequently. We're updating it all the time, daily, pretty much getting updates to the website. And we're also on Twitter. We also have a YouTube channel that started somewhat recently, and we're using our YouTube channel as a collection for all of our webinars and other kind of videos that we've been doing. And then, of course, if you're not already, but I think you should be, we have a mailing list that you can sign up for, and that's how you get all of our announcements. Also, in kind of end of 2015, I started a research highlights section to our website. This has been growing, and it's been a really great way to feature research that's coming out of the community. And by community, I kind of define that pretty broadly. Is it people who are working on topics tangentially related to CLIVAR? Yes, kind of, but we try to encourage research highlights that are people who are involved with us, people who have been or previously on one of our panels, one of our working groups, the science team, have come to our workshops. And we use these research highlights as a way to get papers and information shared to the community in kind of a little bit of a snapshot sort of way. Anyone can submit a research highlight idea to me. I'm looking for kind of new and interesting research, right? If it's just something we already kind of knew and a small step, that's not really something we want to spend time trying to create a blurb about. So try to make it new and interesting. A link with our topics, of course, is what we're looking for. And I'm not competing with any sort of news cycle on these, so it doesn't need to be, hey, my paper's coming out next week, let's do this. We typically have, I'm looking at papers up to 6 months old for these research highlights. They're short, they're somewhere around 250 to 300 words, so it doesn't take you long to write them. I help with an editorial process for them, and there's more guidelines on our web if you're interested. I also did a kind of a 2016 research highlights in review as a collection of what we did in 2016. And finally, kind of just a few ways for you to be active as a panel member. The most easiest way, of course, is to participate. Participate fully in our summits. Try to make as many telecons as you can. We have webinars, and feel free to tune in to other panels' webinars when they host them. I know many of you tune in to PISMA's webinars, which is really great. Also, you can organize sessions, and we've done this in the past, and it's worked out quite well. And when you do organize a session at a big conference or meeting, let me know. We'll help advertise that for you. And Mike mentioned these, and I'll mention them again. And these are seen as two kind of important tools to really kind of advance activities coming from the panel, both proposing workshops and working groups. And we definitely encourage proposals coming from our panels. That's kind of where we see a lot of our proposals coming from for these. As Mike mentioned, working groups are particularly really competitive, and workshops are going to be as well. They need to have broad appeal to all kind of our US CLIVAR agencies. And, with funding uncertainty, these things are always up in question because these are things that require funding to get done. But they really do have great value for that investment. So we are still trying to make sure that those continue to happen. Other things, Mike mentioned some of the action items that panels do, whether it's kind of organizing input into like the TPAWS 2020 reports. Things like that are great ways for panels to get involved in. Doing additions of variations are another way. But we're always open to other ideas. So give us feedback if you have ways of thinking that, your panel can be engaged with, and we would love to kind of, help make that happen for you and your panel. And with that, I'm just going to probably say thank you. Thank you for your time, both today as well as during your term. We realize that your time is very valuable, and we are really appreciative that you have decided to volunteer your time with US CLIVAR. So I hope that you find your experience worthwhile with us, and that you share in all the great things that we accomplish. So thank you for today, and thank you for your time on the panel, and we will turn it over to some Q&A. So if you have questions, the easiest way, so we don't all speak over each other, is raise your hand, and I see a hand go up already. Raise your hand. There's a raise hand button somewhere on your screen. I apologize, I have a different view. It could be in your right bottom left-hand corner. And we'll call on you and ask us any questions you have. So Manu, I saw your hand go up first. Go ahead.
I actually, more than ask a question, I wanted to thank you and Mike for the incredible amount of work that you have put in really revitalizing US CLIVAR. You guys do an amazing job, and I think without you, we wouldn't be where we are. So thank you very much. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, thanks, Manu. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. That was to both of you. That was a very nice overview. I have a few questions, so I'll ask the first, which related to your last slide, and then let others ask theirs, and because some of the others were for Mike. But on that last slide, when you mentioned organizing sessions at AGU, for instance, is typically one organizes a session, but then is it branded as a sort of CLIVAR-supported session by just a few words in the abstract, or is there something that is more, I guess, to linking it to CLIVAR?
Yeah, good question. So it's a multitude of ways, and the short answer is yes, if you feel the need to. We have had sessions, I think, last year and the year before, particularly 2 years ago, that were specifically in the title of the session, a US CLIVAR X, Y, and Z, right? So it was really focused on, 4 panel members had gotten together and wanted to brand it as like a US CLIVAR session proposal. And that's great, particularly if it's something like we have been working on this climate process team concept, right? And kind of getting a next call for that, and we had a workshop, and that was one way that really made sense maybe to brand it as a US CLIVAR thing, so we encourage that and we support that. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to do it specifically US CLIVAR. We want you to think of it as a way of how you're going to get the biggest turnout for your session. If putting US CLIVAR's name somewhere in the abstract or in the title may help that, that's great, but don't feel obligated. Even if it's just maybe you and another panel member, or you and 3 other scientists somewhere else who put a session together, we still will help you advertise that, so you can send that to me. I try to do a collection, but yeah, we're open to whatever you all think makes sense for your session is going to get the biggest turnout.
Okay, great. And then on the second question on this slide is, I wonder if you could just briefly comment like on the workshops and working groups when there are proposals for these. If one is selected, what kind of order of funding or other support is then given to the selected workshop or working group?
So working groups have a set amount of funding. I think Mike is at $70,000 over approximately a 2 to 3 year period.
75, yeah.
75, correct. And so with that is that's not funding for us, right, as far as Mike and I's salaries. That's funding to get you all organized to host meetings, et cetera. Publications, if you want to do 1 or 2 publications, the journal charges for that. That kind of comes out of that $75,000 over 2 to 3 years, depending on the lifetime of the working group. With that comes staff support, right? So Mike and I we're supported from our baseline budget to support all the working group activities outside of that funding. Similar with workshops. If a workshop gets funded through US CLIVAR, and the funding for those really vary, everything from $5,000 to $10,000, depending on what the needs are and how many other people are helping to co-sponsor it, upwards to big conferences like the International Open Science Conference that happened in September, where agencies really contribute quite a bit to those big conferences like that. So it really just depends on the scope of your needs for the workshop. And in our workshop calls, which go out twice a year, we encourage whoever's putting those together to reach out to us at the project office, particularly Mike and Jill, in developing that budget. They'll have great feedback on what's gonna fly, so to speak, in front of the agencies. And then if it is a US CLIVAR supported workshop, we help staff that as well, including everything from getting your save the date website announcement out all the way up to staffing during the workshop and the reports afterwards.
Okay. And the 2 times a year, are they generally around the same time of year?
Yep, spring and fall. Our current spring announcement is currently open, and that closes on April 7th. And then you'll want, so if you think of a spring call that closes on April 7th, you need to give at least 6 months, is the earliest 9-month time frame before you're having a workshop.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I had seen Tony. Did you have a question? Tony, are you on mute? So we can't hear you, Tony. I'm going to leave you for now and go to someone else. And if you get your voice off, let us know. If you get your sound working, let us know. We also have Samson with us. Samson, do you have a question?
Yes. How much platform does CLIVAR give to planned field campaigns that, say, are upcoming and people want to organize themselves and plan a workshop and perhaps need some endorsement and encouragement from agencies and so on? Is there a mechanism for that kind of activity when the field campaign is actually going to happen?
So yeah, the US CLIVAR, I should point out, does not endorse process studies or field campaigns. In fact, for a lot of things, we don't offer endorsement. Our agency sponsors prefer for the actual sponsorship of a workshop or working group or proposal package that comes in to initiate a field campaign, for example. The funding of that then constitutes an endorsement by that agency for it to go forward. So we're careful about the way that we engage process studies and field campaigns. We do so principally through our process study model improvement panel, and we've set up this webinar series as a way of providing engagement at 3 important stages for a process study as it's being formulated before it's gotten to the agencies, so that we can provide some input on best practice. Oh, I'm getting some feedback.
So try now, Mike.
Yeah, so we can get we can provide input on best practices, on developing strong data management plans from the outset, engagement of modeling community at the time that you're doing your experimental design, and things of that nature. So it's more of a ability of given our expertise on the panel, to provide input to those that would be proposing downstream a field campaign. After a campaign is funded then by an agency or collection of agencies, we then engage either before or when they get back from the field. We try to hit them before they go. So again, we can check in with them about their data management plans, their modeling engagement, and other strategic issues regarding their deployments. And then we also try to engage them toward the sunset period of their synthesis and modeling phase of the program, to see how well they did, to ourselves further develop our sense of best practices, and to encourage them to provide legacy data sets, data access to the broader community, and importantly, a state of the science update. So a kind of a capstone article for the community to learn more about the overall objectives and success of the field campaign.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And following on Tony's question, he typed in the chat, which is a little bit about what I was speaking to before. He was interested in, when CLIVAR supports something, a project, what kind of support? Is it travel, people, time, etc.? And yes, it depends on what it is. But you know, if CLIVAR is doing something and supporting something from our agencies, someone has a train behind them. In addition to, you know, the travel for the organizing committee, potentially invited speakers, you know, there's staff support as well. So it really is just project specific, but that's often written out in whatever proposal or prospectus comes our way, or, you know, if it's a science team, you know, that's kind of a different ball altogether. But yeah, so it's dependent per project.
Yeah, I would say generally speaking on people time, there's the in-kind provision of our time in the project office, but we don't typically provide through funds that the agencies give us sponsorship of scientists' time. So, you know, I think, harkening back to what Kristen said, we very much appreciate the enormous effort and amount of time that those in the community put toward their participation in our panels and our SSC and the working groups and organizing committees and participating in the workshops themselves. In any one year, we can have some 400 scientists being touched by US CLIVAR, and it's a much smaller subset of individuals who really carry the largest share of the work in planning and organizing activities. The panel members and SSC members are among that core group, and unfortunately we don't reimburse for your time, but we do provide you, we attempt to provide you travel support for your annual meetings and the meetings that are held, so that you can attend and participate effectively.
Mona? Did you have a question? Go ahead, Mona.
Yes. Thank you, Mike and Chris, for the presentation. So my question is that there are, through all these different research projects, I bet there are several students who are engaged on the US CLIVAR research team. So the question is there a dedicated effort to engage students who are supported by CLIVAR or you know, some form of leveraged funding? I speak from the perspective of a physical oceanographer, you know, who was engaged in research on Amock a couple of years ago, and I've been following CLIVAR ever since. And I feel, you know, I feel honored to now serve on a panel. But, you know, in this journey from being a student to now an early career professional, I've always looked for opportunities, you know, to engage more. And only now as a professional I got this opportunity. So I wonder if there are students like me who are engaged in some aspect of research on climate variability and predictability, and who want to stay more engaged and active. And I think that's an important aspect, because if you do want to retain the next generation of scientists in research on climate variability and predictability, I think it's important to provide those opportunities, or at least introduce this program to students. So I'll stop there, and I would love to hear the feedback.
Can I take this one first, Kristen?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So I want to say, Mona, thanks for the question, and this is very much in our sights as a program. We see that the ability for early career scientists and students to participate in the program and not only present their results, but to engage others in the community, and particularly network and make contacts with more senior people within the community, can be very beneficial to their career growth and opportunities for the future, and entrainment over the long term. So to that end, we attempt to address barriers that may exist for early career scientists and students. So for example, for all of our workshops and conferences, we promote the use of, and I don't think there's been one since I've been here for the last 7 years, of reduced and generally half the fee for their attendance for a meeting. So the registration fees are reduced. We also attempt in most meetings to provide travel support. It's through an application process typically to help defray at least part of the cost of travel for students and early career scientists. As well, we seek to provide opportunities for them to present oral presentations. So for any of our organizing committee groups, when they're putting together a workshop or a conference, we do try to emphasize the importance when they're looking through their abstract selection to identify early career and student participants for making oral presentations. We see that as a really important opportunity for them to engage. Similarly, for our written materials that US CLIVAR produces, we typically prefer to have an early career scientist or student be the lead author for the research highlights that Kristen mentioned, as well as for articles in our newsletter, the Variations newsletter. So we are always looking for opportunities to have early career scientists engage more readily. We do avoid promoting their participation on panels in particular. In discussion with the SSC over the years, we've determined for those who have participated in panels and on the SSC, this is more anecdotal than a formal survey, but the feedback we've gotten is that for people who are still early and especially those who are trying to get tenure, that it's perhaps most opportune for them to get involved on a panel, a standing commitment for several years, after they've already gotten tenure. The opportunities for early career scientists and students are maybe perhaps more in organizing committees for workshops that are more directed toward their particular research topic of interest. And then, of course, participating in workshops and our writing opportunities. Anything to add, Kristen?
No, I think that was really good. Yeah, we definitely, like Mike covered a lot of ways that we do engage with the early careers and students. And we're always open to new ideas. So if folks have those, please shoot those our way. Mike and I have an eye towards that, right? We have an eye towards that. We have an eye towards diversity in our sciences. And so we try to encourage that, and we're open to other ideas. So shoot them our way if you have them. Thanks, Mona. Great question. We have a couple more. Shane, go ahead. Shane, you may be on mute. Try that again. So Shane, we're still not hearing you. Feel free to type that in the chat, and I can read that out loud. Victoria, are you with us, and do you have a question?
Let's see, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to, it's not really exactly a question. I just wanted to say that I'm one of the fall AGU meeting organizers for oceanography, and so if people are interested in submitting sessions, I'd be really happy to help facilitate that. particularly we are trying to get new formats for sessions that include things like panels, and those would be viewed more favorably if they're shared, for example, between ocean and atmosphere or cryosphere and so on. So that kind of facilitation, I'd be really happy if anyone to help with if anyone is planning such a program. And so they do have a co-sponsoring agency sort of label for sessions like that, and things like SISDEMs have used that in the past. So that's something that could also be kind of tagged with CLIVAR potentially, if that would make your session more visible.
Great. And does that time frame align with session proposal time frame, or is this kind of more open-ended as the meeting planning progresses?
So if a session has to be proposed in the session proposal time frame. So yeah, that's open right now, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I think that's open until mid-April. So there are a number of different there are a couple of different frameworks for sessions, like I said, that include things like pop-up sessions and lightning talks and things that you might not have considered in the past typically. Oceans hasn't taken advantage of those. They were some of them were available last year. I think maybe atmospheric sciences might have done a little more. But anyway, those are things if you look through and you want to know more about it, I'd be happy to talk with anyone.
Great. I know Mike and some of our other panels had been involved in a hiatus session last year at fall meeting that was a session that
2 years ago. Yeah, it was
2
excellent.
years ago.
It resulted in a journal article. It was really a good way for us to engage the community at large, and it was really fun.
Yeah, that was my suggestion.
Yeah.
Oh, that was? Oh, that's right.
So I would suggest if you can send me an email kind of with this encouragement and send it to your panel, and then I'll forward it to the other two panels for their consideration, since we've got like about 3 or 4 weeks before the deadline. That would be great.
Sure thing.
So we've got a question. Shane has typed in his question. I'll read that, and then I think Andy put his hand back up, so we'll go to him second. So Shane wanted to ask, he's got a couple questions here. Are there reports of activities of past working groups? The short answer is yes. If you go to our website, there's a reports, I think it's called product news and, news and publications, and drop down there, and we've got reports, and you can find all of our previous working groups have done reports. You can also go to the working group's individual websites, and they have reports on them as well. So that information is available. We also have, with our current working groups, we have some webinars that are on our website about their current activities. And as Mike mentioned, leading up to the summit here, I'm almost got the schedule confirmed, but you will have webinars that we invite you and ask you and encourage you to attend leading up to the summit from our 2 current working groups and our US Amock Science team. Those will be about 30 minutes with 30 minutes for Q&A, and will hopefully facilitate discussion, more robust discussion at the summit based on what they present. And then Shane's second question is, I would love to hear a little bit more about how US CLIVAR contributes to international CLIVAR. So Mike, why don't you take that?
I've got some slides that will help me do that. Here we go. So, is it going to let me get there? It's not pulling up. So, so here, this depicts the organizational structure for international CLIVAR. And so US CLIVAR supports international CLIVAR very directly in a couple of ways. One, we support the Deputy Director position, Nico Caltibiano. He's located in Southampton, UK. The main office of the main headquarters for the International CLIVAR Project Office is located in Qingdao, China, and sponsored by the first Institute of Oceanography there. And so we provide a full staff position to help the activities of the International CLIVAR Project Office, as well as supporting travel for U.S. members of all of the groups depicted here on this chart. So they have their scientific steering group. There are 3 U.S. members on that group, and so we pay for their travel to their annual meeting. There are core and regional panels that, global and regional panels, 8 in total. There's perhaps going to be a 9th one that focuses on what they're calling the Northern Ocean, the Arctic and subarctic seas, that may be initiated this year. So that the U.S. members of those panels then, which meet every 18 months nominally, we provide through the US CLIVAR program the travel support in total for the members to attend. Here on the right you see research foci. These are akin to our research challenges. These are 3 to 5 year activities within their program at the international level that also have teams of scientists that work on them. And Tony might have a little more information on how large these teams get. It's between 10 and 15 members, and typically U.S. membership is 1/3. And again, as our funds allow, we support the U.S. members of those teams to attend their meetings. Now, in addition to the actual tangible support that I just described, US CLIVAR has an intellectual engagement. So through our members, we do ask that they help carry water from our US program, activities that are going on that we're engaged in that perhaps map onto the interest of International CLIVAR. And in some cases, we work on topics that International CLIVAR itself hasn't yet engaged, but through our participation in, say, the regional panels, we're able to bring those activities to the fore and get new collaboration with other countries by engaging through International CLIVAR. We do have reports out from each of these groups directly to our SSC, Interagency Group, and panels within a month or two after the meetings are held. These are intended to be quick, pithy highlights to provide you information to inform the panel and SSC discussions, and also to keep our sponsors informed. And then this next slide shows how there's good correspondence between, this is aliased a little bit, but between our core research topics and research challenges within the U.S. and International CLIVAR, the research foci and grand challenges that WCRP has taken on, for which International CLIVAR takes the lead. So there's good mapping in terms of what we've identified as core and challenges, topics, onto the international arena. And what's important to recognize that International CLIVAR is intended to help. It doesn't provide funding for activities. It does help coordinate across countries activities. And for example, the basin panels are quite effective at developing networks within the basins to advance the observing system. They've also been really instrumental in developing collaborations internationally and spawning new process studies. Those are two key areas where those basin panels have been particularly important to the US CLIVAR agenda.
Great. And Mike, would you say that there's opportunities as people rotate off our panels for engagement internationally?
Oh, certainly. So like the US program, where each fall we put out a call, an open call for new panel members, International CLIVAR has adopted that a couple of years ago as well. And so there's an open call, there's an opportunity. Now they're going to be limited on how many U.S. members they have on each of their panels. So the competition is a little stronger there. But they do take into account, International CLIVAR does their SSC and panels in review of prospective panelists. The prospective panelists' participation within the U.S. CLIVAR program and develop a connection back and dialogue back with the U.S. effort. So after you're done here, you have another full, 3 or 4 years on the international scene.
Just can't shake them loose from CLIVAR. Thanks, Mike. Andy, did you have some more questions for us?
Oh yeah, I have one more question for Mike, and that was back on the PPAI 2016-2017 activities slide.
Mm-hmm. I'll get there. Here we go. There we go.
Yeah, I was just curious. We might have covered this in the last call, but could you remind us what the status of these various bullet points is? I mean, bullet activities.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So just so everyone's aware, we do have we try to have at least quarterly telecons. So after there's the in-person meeting, typically in the fall, in the summer, then in the fall we'll have a follow-up telecon. Assignments are made for action items during the summer meeting, and then we immediately in the fall look for reports out on progress, and then again in the winter. And so we just have had another round of panel meetings, so we've gotten a little bit of an update on progress on some of these things. For the PPI panel, what I'd say is on the modeling effort, the workshop on modeling that was proposed in our fall call and was not selected for support. However, there was good amount of feedback to those that were proposing that effort, and I think they're going to come back with a revamped workshop proposal, even for maybe for this round in the spring, to expand out beyond just the originally proposed focus on cloud permitting models, but to include a broader suite of dynamical and statistical approaches. The BAMS article, I do not know if progress has been made on that. Trainings, we've had initial engagement with the the UCAR COMET program, but that is something that's still pending. And then case studies, I think, is a longer-term action item. The idea of engaging the applications community more effectively on the S2S problem. I don't know that anything's been started on there.
Okay, thanks.
There's a lot of things yet to be done here.
Yeah. Okay, it's all out in front of us.
Yeah, we're planning to, Andy, and for others who are with us, I had just spoken, I can't remember, Chris, I think is what it was. We're going to maybe try to get another telecon scheduled with our panels here in early May, really more focused on getting the Agenda Summit finalized, but it would be an opportunity, of course, to touch base on some of proposed action items and follow up and stuff. And I would also add that, sometimes action items that don't make good progress will be reassessed, and then at the summit, when those kind of in-person meetings, that's a really great time to kind of set what it is you want to work on, and if things need to be reprioritized, that's the opportunity to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? I know there's a number of hands up, but I can't remember if that's from previous questions or not. So I'll just leave this as an open format, and please speak up if you have any other questions for Mike and I. Mona, go ahead. Oh, hold on, Mona. I need to take you off mute. You have a little bit of feedback when someone else speaks. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you both for answering my previous question. Just as a follow-up to your comments, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I think having a student engagement section on your website might be helpful to highlight some of the activities that you do. And then secondly, my question is it within the scope of US CLIVAR and International CLIVAR to host international summer schools instead of, perhaps have focused workshops and summits and conferences in the United States, but then, again, trying to think about CLIVAR from more of an early career and student perspective, it would be incredibly useful to have international summer school on some specified topics.
So, yes, that is indeed something of interest to us, and if you're interested in it and you have a topic that you'd like to organize such a summer school or summer institute, please do talk to us and engage one of these calls in the spring or fall for getting that organized. We have partnered in the past with the NCAR Advanced Studies program, and we've had at least 2 co-sponsored summer schools that they put on, and we've included and expanded that out to include a workshop, so that not only are the students working on specific instruction and curricula and projects, but they also have the opportunity to directly engage during the 3-week period the experts in the field in a workshop format. So we found that to be a successful approach. It's been a couple of years since we've coordinated one of those. And then internationally, I should say that the World Climate Research Program and International CLIVAR are as well very interested in helping promote training opportunities for early career scientists and students. To that end, they have in particular engaged the ICTP, that's the International Center for Theoretical Physics, located in Trieste, Italy, which has as part of its mandate and responsibility to develop summer schools and short courses for those early in their career, emphasizing that. And so we do get on occasion requests for support of those as well. I will say that if the effort's held outside the U.S., the agency managers are more reluctant to provide support. So getting international efforts to come to the U.S., while it might be a heavier lift, that is favorably, those tend to fare better, I think, than those that are held overseas.
Yeah, and Mona, just to follow on what Mike. Oh, let's put you back on me. Okay, great. Just to follow on what Mike said, and then I'll let you go. You should have a really great opportunity. So if you come to the summit with some ideas, right, that you can share with other members of your PPI panel, and you'll have a good timing in the sense that like our fall workshop call will not go out until September. So there's time for you to put together some ideas with others on your panel, or just take the lead yourself to organize something like this. But we definitely encourage it. I think it's great. So thank you. Okay. Mona, do you have a follow-up, or is there any other questions from folks?
No, I just wanted to say thank you both.
Great. Thanks, Mona.
You're welcome.
Samson, are you all set? Did you have any other questions? I just want to go through hands I still see raised. I'm going to take that as you're all set. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. We ran a little long, which is, I think, a good sign that you all had some great questions. Thank you again so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your questions. Feel free to reach out to Mike and I at any time. Our emails and phones are always open for input from you. So please do feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And we look forward to seeing you at the summit in August. And I'm going to send a copy of the slides around, so everyone will have a PDF of the slides, because I know there's a lot of great information on there that you may want to keep, as well as a recording for those who are unable to join us. So with that, have a wonderful day and afternoon, and we'll talk with you very soon.